are joined now by our Senior Counsel for Global Affairs, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. And Secretary Pompeo, first, just your reaction to the U.S. Supreme Court. You've been traveling the country since leaving the Office of Secretary of State. This has been bothering people around the country. It's been it's bothering employers and employees. This mandate by the Biden administration, a power grab that the Supreme Court said if they allowed would be never ending. They'd always be doing this. They'd always be looking for emergency orders. And now for 2/3 of the American workforce, which is about 100 million people, these federal mandates are not going to apply to them or their companies.
Hey, Jordan, that's a good outcome on so many levels, as you just described it. The first one is for individuals who now have the capacity to make good decisions for themselves. People have said, well, we're going to have to learn to live with this. I have to tell you, I think most Americans have figured out how to live with this. Second, we saw a massive federal overreach here, and we saw the United States Supreme Court reject that. That's good news, not just on this issue of COVID, but good news on so many fronts. And finally, now employers, too, have the freedom to make good decisions for their own workplace. I ran a small company for 7 or 8 years back in South Central Kansas. I wanted to be able to make good decisions for the health, for the safety, for the shareholders, for my team, for my customers, everybody involved. And the federal government had stepped in and taken that away from these small business owners. And yesterday, the Supreme Court restored that balance. And it's a good thing for the country, for the economy, and for workers all across the nation.
Mike, one of the things I said during the break here, we were talking to our folks on social media, and that was, elections have consequences. One of those consequences happened to be during your administration, 3 justices of the Supreme Court, President Trump was able to nominate and appoint who are now serving on the court, and those 3, this was a 6-3 decision. So these situations make a big difference, and the importance of Supreme Court nominees, I drill down on that often on this broadcast and have for 40 years. I have litigated the Supreme Court in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and the 2020s. So over almost 5 decades of litigation, and it's important, but this is where you see how important it really is.
Jay, nothing could be more true. You know this. You've now lived it. I think the American people are living it as well.
Yep.
Remember the hearings on these mandate cases. Remember the counterfactual statements made by a couple of the justices. One should remember who nominated and confirmed those justices that made outrageous statements about freedom and about people being like machines. Those weren't nominations by Republican presidents. The Republican presidents tend to pick really capable, constitutionally grounded people who understand the things that have made America successful and do the job of interpreting the law, not creating it. And that's what you saw yesterday. This would have gone very differently. Had Secretary Clinton won that election in 2016, yesterday would have been very different. And it's a great, because they would have walked away. The justices that she would have picked, 3 of them, would have walked away from this and said, you bet the federal government can go grab this, go reach here, go do this to the American people. I'm confident of that. It's unfortunate. It's not political. It is legal and constitutional.
One of the things. I'm
companies that do that.
Yeah, no, and I'm what I am really pleased for, and I thank our ACLJ members all over the country, because our team put this together from beginning to end in 8 weeks. It went from the Sixth Circuit to the Supreme Court of the United States to a decision in 6 weeks. We were working on about 2 weeks before the first public filing to get it ready. So it moved at lightning speed. Our team did a great job. Our donors supporting the work of the ACLJ made it all happen. But I also think, Mike, that this depoliticized this issue, which I think is important for the American people as well. It's not making this a political issue now. You do what's best for your family, for yourself, with your doctors. That's what you people need to be making the decision. The government had no business getting in, especially OSHA had no business getting in here. But it does, I think, depoliticize some of this as well.
I think that's very true. I hope we see the same kind of depolitization when we come to the cases that protect every human life as well. Another issue that the ACLJ has been front and center on, that's sitting before the court today, that they'll decide here in the next handful of months. Again, we want the court to do its function, perform its function. We want families and communities and cities to do their work, taking care of themselves. We want the federal government to be out of the way as much as is humanly possible and consistent deeply with the Constitution. The ACLJ has done great work of making sure that every time they reach someplace they ought not to be reaching, they come, they file, they make cogent, good arguments that ultimately prevail. And making sure we get the right nominees to the Supreme Court is an important part of that.
It sure
as well.
is. And look, I mean, if you just look at the age of the Supreme Court and where it is now, the next presidential, I mean, it could happen this cycle, of course, too. Not hoping that on anybody. And all these there's calls for, the left is trying to get Justice Breyer to retire. I think, by the way, every time they try to do that, I think these justices say they're not going to do it. And by the way, if you ever get a Supreme Court appointment, take it, because they live to be 100. I mean, it's great. I mean, I'm saying that in a good way. I mean, they serve a long time. It's a lifetime appointment, and they can serve for 40 years, some of them. Let me ask last question here, and that is, obviously, we're thrilled with the win. You just mentioned Dobbs. That's in the next case. I'm hopeful this bodes well. It was similar kind of rationale here, deferring there to the state in their decision on protecting life. I think that's the trend of where this is going, which will be great. But when you see this situation, Mike, now, and you're looking at midterm elections in just a couple of months, it's hard to believe, but here we are again. And then the presidential stuff will start up in right after that. In all reality, there's a lot at stake for the country in the next 48 months.
We have seen that. The American people are suffering from that, whether it's inflation or the fact that the shelves aren't stocked or the fact that it's hard to find folks who want to go to work. All of these things are a result of governmental choices, policies that have been put in place under President Biden with Democrat control of both houses of Congress. I think the American people, I don't see this as deeply political. I think the American people are going to see that it's just not working for them and for their families and for their schools and they're gonna walk away from this. And I think you're right. We will start voting here in the United States in September of this year, just a handful of months away in some states. It's time that the American people demand they take back the things that are most fundamental to them, and I think they're going to.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your work with us and your work also as Secretary of State, but also now being the clarion voice that you are on all of these big issues. And great information that Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, now our Senior Counsel, has on ACLJ.org. We encourage people to go there. Thanks for being with us as always, and we love working with you.